Okay, hey, welcome back. We're still in astrology and history. Now we're in Greece. Astrology in ancient Greece. From the second book, An Intermediate's Guide to the Mystery Sciences, written by me. Okay, Roman culture was carried to Italy from Greece after the Trojan War, about 1184 BC, and then intertwined with Etruscan culture, which was predominantly Latin. The Greeks were the power of the Western world in the days before Rome, dating the civilization of the Hellas from before 6000 BC. The foundation of this culture was also traced back to the bloodline of the gods. The namesake of their tribe was Helen, son of the god Prometheus. Theirs is a rich history of post-flood sea merchants / pirates who accidentally introduced the Western world to philosophy and art. Their trade with the Orient, the Levant, and Africa was their strength because it enlightened them to the ideas of the world. While the Hellas were well-traveled, they also made colonies and cities which were stationary and set up their culture from these cities. In the 6th century BCE, the city of Miletus was the birthplace of philosophy. The need for this newfound thought process came from an overabundance of religious and legendary allegory worship. The Romans brought the Greek systems of political, educational, and religious beliefs with them from Troy, and for that reason we need not compare Roman deities with Greek ones. They are pretty much the same system with a few choice changes and assignments of powers and names. The gods they served were personified versions of astrological entities. The more time that passed, the more they forgot that. Much like in all cultures, where ideas are personified, the simulacra becomes the reality and the truth of the simulation is lost. To discover the astrological significance of religion, we must decode the pantheon of simulacra, which has stolen its voice. In the beginning, there was the goddess Chaos. She was all that was, and all that she was an endless void. This is like a reoccurring occurrence where like everything starts from a wormhole. It seems a common theme in cosmologies to begin with chaos. The concept here is that the feminine energy is unstructured and created with limitless potential, but no organization of form. It's so real. Just call me out like that. Chaos was not an empty void, however, for she was composed of all things in their idea. She was the equivalent to the oriental egg from which all life was born. She was the all. The first ideas to escape the void of chaos were Erebus, darkness, Nyx, night, Eros, procreation, Gaia, earth, and Taurus, the abyss. It's like everybody's having 5 kids. The feminine creative energies of the cosmos are the first to manifest. This is consistent with the circle. As the circle explores, it creates more circles and thereby more Vesica Pisces. Each idea upon manifestation into the universe of the physical plane gave birth to its opposite. For here, all nature is dual. For darkness to manifest here, its polarity must also be made manifest. Please welcome ether, light. For Nyx, her equal opposite was Emera, day. The deep abyss of Tartarus was polarized with the void of chaos. While chaos was a void, separate from all other vibrations, it was all-inclusive. Tartarus was the empty void of nothingness. It was said to be as far from Hades as the heavens are from earth. This gives us our white and black mirrors. Gaia, who is physicality herself, was personified as the earth itself, though it was more likely that Gaia was intended to signify matter in general. She was polarized by Uranus, the heavens, and the great equal to procreation, Eros, sometimes called Phanes, was Eris, or strife. So you have, instead of like the Ogdoad was 4 and 4, equal opposites, with the Greek system you have 5 and 5. So you have Gaia and Uranus. And Gaia is earth and matter, and Uranus is the heavens and the higher planes, right? So then you have Eros and Eris, which is procreation and generation and labor and strife. And then you have Chaos and Tartarus, which is Tartarus is the like the abyss, the waiting area, and then chaos is the void or limitless potential. And then you have ether and Erebus, and Erebus is darkness or potential, and then ether is light and wisdom. And then you have Nyx, which is night or the subconscious, and then you have Emira, which is day and the conscious. These original concepts of manifested ideas were personified and twisted over ages of telling and retelling allegories meant to preserve the truths of creation. These stories corrupted the truths, but hid them also and escorted them safely into the future. Darkness, Erebus, was born of chaos. As the story goes, Erebus was a male deity, but in the world of mystery sciences, things are not always as they seem. Darkness in Hermetics has always been categorized under water, the feminine principle reflecting the light. Regardless of the ancient personification in storytelling, we will remain consistent with the Hermetic approach to the idea of darkness. Erebus was born alongside Nyx, the primeval idea of night. It was night who bore the creative capacity to produce offspring for the darkness. This is the reason for the masculinization of the darkness. The dwelling place of Erebus was supposed to be between the earth and Hades. This is also descriptive of the limitations of this idea of darkness. If Earth is limited to energetically dense matter, and Hades is limited to the spaces between dense matter and the realm of spirit, as it represents the entrance to Tartarus, we must presume that this darkness is a fluid, transitional property of the life experience between physicality and spiritual habitation. This is consistent with the transitional etheric body of man, and all things having physical form. For a body of matter to have the capacity for movement, it must first have something through which to move. Erebus, though stationary, was said to have been scattered about the sky by Nyx, and then dissolved by Emira in repetitive cycles. This is descriptive of the veil between the mind and the spirit world, both the consciousness in the day and the subconscious of nightly activity. In waking consciousness, the mind focuses on physical sensory perceptions, ignoring the spiritual activity happening all around it. The veil is the darkness which keeps us blinded by the light. In subconscious activity, while the consciousness is at rest, the mind creates worlds for us to distract ourselves with. Again, there is a veil of darkness hiding behind the light of life. Erebus was the personification of this veil of darkness. Nyx was the goddess of night. She was the principle of rhythm. She encouraged the cycles of the moon to traverse the heavens in a manner so continuous, you could set a calendar by her. And men did. She is represented by the owl, much like some of her feminine predecessors who were known for wisdom and reliability. Her timing was impeccable, and her poise unparalleled. And just as the Bible records, there was first evening, then morning. From the union of darkness and night came ether and Hemera, light and day. This is to be expected, as the idea of either could not manifest into the dual realm of physicality without also manifesting its opposite. But alone, with no fertilization, Nyx produced Moros, doom, Thanatos, death, Hypnos, sleep, Momus, blame, Oases, distress, Nemesis, retribution, Apate, deceit. I want to say Giras, maybe it's a hard G, Giras, old age, Philotes, which is lust, and in some versions the Oniri, dreams, and the Moirai, fates, and the Kyries, which are destruction spirits, kind of like the fates. The idea here is that night brings foreboding and negative energies. The subconscious is the emotional mind, which activates at the rise of the moon. With nightfall comes insecurities and restlessness. All of the children of Nyx are representative of this concept. Taurus represents the abyss. This is the counterpart to chaos. The abyss is a spirit and power which collects energies into itself in order to bind them to the inner depths of the universe. There is consciousness, subconsciousness, and then there is the abyss. As the levels of dimension ascend from physicality upward, so too can they descend equally downward. This is the evil twin mirror of the tree of life. As many planes of existence as are above us are so also below us. Thoth told us in the Emerald Tablets, 15 are the ways that lead to Duat. 7 above, 7 below, and the moment that you're in. Tartarus is the Tartarus is the deepest down known to the ancients. From here, the spirits of the disembodied are in waiting. They can be recycled, reincarnated, or reinstated into their favorite moment. They are outside of time. They are outside of the domain of light. Tartarus is not so much a location as a state of consciousness. It's a vibration which exists, frozen, and separate from all others, a sunken place. Tartarus was said to have united with Gaia and produced one child, Typhon, the dreadful serpent monster who tried to overthrow the Olympian gods for rule of the cosmos. This is the common theme in ancient histories as well. Many cultures have records of the time before the age of civilization, when reptilian creatures invaded Earth from an exterior or inferior plane of existence. The details and descriptions vary, but it's clear from the strong consensus worldwide that snake gods were a threat to humankind and may still be hidden among us in the illusionary form of humans. Typhon and his consort Echidna, a similar serpent creature whose face was that of a beautiful maiden, produced many of the terrible monsters of the Greek mythological tales. Many of the demigod heroes gained their fame from slaying these monsters. Others were meant to guard portals or property. It is pretty peculiar how the reptilian creatures were said to have come from below and then remained to guard portals to other dimensions. It's almost as if they were brought here for that purpose alone. Eros is a confused idea in Greek cultures. 2 gods bear this name. The primordial god is called Phanes, Phanes. The younger version is a child of Aphrodite, more commonly confused with Cupid. The original primordial deity was considered thrice born and therefore hermaphrodite in nature. This is the reason for their being the god of procreation. The manifestation of Eros brought the ability for men to produce children with women as opposed to being created by the gods. This is not the first time that we've heard of the concept that there was a time before this was possible. The anthropogenesis theory of Madame Blavatsky describes the first root race of men having no physical form, and the second root race having physicality but no ability to produce offspring, and the third root race having been hermaphrodite at first and then recreated as separated by genders, allowing for procreation to occur between them. Eros, in later accounts, was described as having hatched from the cosmic egg, which was wrapped with a serpent and created by Kronos, the god of time. This is a very poetic way of saying evolution. The serpent was often a depiction of wisdom and the egg of potential. Imagery of Phanes, or Eros, is still representative of this concept, as they stand inside the circle of the zodiac with the snake coiled up their legs and body. The name Phanes is connected to the idea of light and firstborn. This would give our astrological perspective a connection to Venus as the Lady of Light, firstborn of the sun, supposedly married to Nyx and holder of the scepter of rule of the gods. Eros was also called Progenus. Eris, strife, was also dual in nature and said to be the opposite of Eros. Hesiod explained that there are 2 personalities of strife, the one which brings dread and cruelty, and the other which causes men to work hard to produce food and maintain life. These elements of the ability to regenerate both children and harvests can be as pleasant as they are unpleasant. The idea of Eris is that all that is good comes with a cost, and all souls must labor to achieve growth. She is the reminder that nothing is easy. Her children include Ponos, which is hardship, Lethe, which is forgetfulness, Limos, starvation, Algos, pains, Hismania, battles, Makai, which is wars, Phenoi, which is murders, Androkatasai, which is manslaughters. I don't know how manslaughters differentiates from murders, but these are 2 different children, apparently. Nikeia, which is quarrels, Pseudeia, which is lies, Logoi, which is stories. Really, stories? Amphilogai, which is disputes, Dysnomia, I'm so sorry, which is anarchy, Ate, which is ruin, and Horkos, which is false oaths. These are all ideas which are extensions of strife and various evolutionary paths led by her. They are also personified reminders that weakness of heart leads to loss, not gain. Pontus and Aurea were personifications of the sea and the mountains of the earth. It was important in that time to prove that the world was formed and shaped prior to man's creation. The placement of these elements of nature alongside the primordial gods was to establish their pre-existence. The Christian Bible makes sure to establish the separation of waters above and below and land before mentioning creations of living things. It was a point meant to be well established. Pontus, as the sea, fathered water creatures and spirits with Gaia, to which maritime weather and inconsistencies were attributed. His firstborn, Nereus, was a personification of the peaceful waters, which escorted sailors safely across the sea. His son, Thaumas, like Thaumas. It's like Thomas, but it's like Thaumas, was a personification of the wonder and beauty of the open sea. His son, Phorcys, and daughter, Ceto, were used to explain the birth of the sea's great monsters. Among them were Echidna, the Gorgons, the Grey, and the dragon Ladon/Draco. In some references, the two were also progenitors of the sea nymph Tusa. Pontus's youngest child, Eurybia, was the personification of the power over the sea. Thalassa was also said to have given Pontus children in the form of the Telkines, elemental spirits of roads, and the schools of fish in the sea. The 10 Aurea were the great mountains of Greece. Each was supplied with its own nymphs, which are elementals, and Oreads. Gaia and Uranus came together to bear the Cyclops, the Hectonkires, and the Titans. Each was a powerful extension of the ideas which bore them. They were used to explain the evolution of the primordial ideas manifested. Gaia was not just the planet Earth, she was the power of manifestation into the physical plane altogether. Out of the void of potential, limitless all comes the power of descent into dense matter. In a realm of polarities, if ascension is an achievement of the consciousness, descent is an achievement of the subconscious. What goes up must first come down. Thoth said it clearly in the Emerald Tablets. Ba is the essence, living forever. Ka is the shadow, that man knows his life. Ba cometh not until Ka is incarnate. Uranus was the god of the sky. The heavens were his body. The outer limits of the physical mind were personified here as the masculine energy both created through and for the manifestation property. For there to be a below, there must also be an above. Uranus was the height to which man could ascend. His starry depth was a reminder of such. Said to be separated from his wife/mother, Gaia, Uranus' domain was as a veil which covered her on all sides. And the veil which would adorn the physical in an exact form-fitting manner. Furthermore, Uranus was said to capture his children at birth, keeping them locked up inside the belly of the earth. Although the nature of mind is freely projected, in physicality it is separated and localized to individualized bodies. Our bodies are literally cages for our spirit. The only thing worse than being caged within a solid body is being caged within a solid body which is trapped outside of the plane to which it belongs. As Madame Blavatsky explains, the first root race was said to have been purely spiritual in nature, having no effect on the physical plane. When the physical and the astral come together, they create an opportunity to experience life. The first children of Gaia and Uranus were the one-eyed Cyclopes, whose powers were of thunder, which is vibration, lightning, which is electricity, and the brightness of lightning, which is the visual light spectrum. This sets the tone for future creations of physicality to create and observe a physical reality. Secondly, the Hectonkires. It means 100 armed and 50 headed. Represents the second root race, which was mighty, but in a state of imbalance, having more physicality than intelligence and no means to reproduce offspring. The third root race, the Titans and Titanides, were an extension of the collaboration of the density of idea and the refined essence of matter finding balance. They were separated by genders, as was first accomplished in the third root race of the Blavatsky narrative, though not until after the first strain of which were still hermaphrodites. The concepts the Titans and Titanides represent are all aspects of creation pre-man, but clearly meant to provide a sustaining environment for man. The evolution of the primordial gods into their children is a reflection of the ages progressing and consciousness expanding in different areas. Each new generation of gods overthrows its father in the masculine restructuring of laws and orders, while the feminine energies of creation only become more skilled and various. In most cultures around the world, the first deities are always nature-based. As agriculture and trading advance, the fertility and sea gods become of importance. As men wage wars, the war gods emerge in the forefront. And as philosophy rises, so do the gods of intelligence. Okay, so then I have like a chart of the Titan gods and like what their domain is and what their power is and what their symbols are, which I'll go over real quick because whatever. Okay, so Oceanus, domain of the waters surrounding Earth, not the waters of Earth, the waters surrounding Earth. Power is binding the Earth to its plane. I'm gonna be like gravity, right? Symbols: the Ouroboros, crab claws, a snake tail, and bullhorns. Okay, Titan Coeus, C-O-E-U-S, Coeus. His domain was the circumpolar star plane around the celestial axis. Very specific Titan, thank you. His power was intelligence, query, and prophecy. Query. His symbols were the North Pole Star, Polaris, and the Eagle. The Titan Crius was, his domain was he was the leader of the zodiacal constellations, just the zodiac, like that was his thing. He was the zodiac. His power was the measure of the year, and his symbols were the ram or the lion. Hyperion, his domain was the outer atmosphere. His power was light, wisdom, and watchfulness. His symbols were the sun, or an angel/man thing. Okay, it's like IAPTUS, but I want to be like we would say it like a J. I don't know. It looks like Eaptus, but maybe it's a J because I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna say Eaptus. Was the Titan, and his domain was the pillar of the west, and his power was mortality, and his symbol was the ox. Cronus. His domain was New Age ruler of the cosmos. His power was time, and his symbol was the Cairo. And if you don't know what Cairo is, it's that thing they tell you can use as an X for Xmas instead of Christmas or whatever. It's an X with like a P inside of it as the Cairo. Titan Tethys, 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 was in the domain of fresh water. The power was fresh water and nursing. The symbol was a winged forehead. Phoebe, the Titan Phoebe, was in the domain of the lower atmosphere. So Hyperion was the outer atmosphere, Phoebe was the lower atmosphere. Her power was prophecy, and her symbol was the moon, Phoebe. Eurybia was a Titan whose domain was the water element in active form, which would have been like waterfalls and creeks and rivers. Her power was dominance of the waters, and her symbol was Lady of the Waters, just some kind of, water chick. The Titan Thea was in the domain of the ether, and her power was sight and light distribution. She's a big ass prism, thank you. Her symbol was cow-eyed, cow eyes, or just the word cow-eyed, I don't know. The Titan Clymene, was in the, it's Clymene, so I'm gonna be like Clymene. Her domain was in the oceans, and her power was the Oceanids, and her symbol was a mermaid, fittingly so. And then the Titan Rhea, she was the queen of the heavens, and her power was fertility and motherhood, and her symbol was the two lions. You ever see those two lions like on either side of a doorway? That's to invoke protection from Rhea. So Oceanus was an evolved variant of Uranus. The name Uranus was a derivative of the word for mist, rain, or urination, giving the god a mysterious form. Like, so mysterious. If the heavens were made of mist, the stars would be held by the mist, not included as a part of it. Thoth tells us in the Emerald Tablets to search ye the mysteries of the earth's heart, learn of the law that exists holding the stars in their balance by the force of the primordial mist. Oceanus was an extension of this primordial mist. His domain was the space surrounding the earth, or the great river surrounding the world. In mystery science, we call this ether. In physics, it's called like the field, the morphogenetic field, the electromagnetic field. In mystery science, we call this ether. It is the connective tissue between the physical and astral planes. Ether is made for and from the four elements of water, fire, air, and earth. Oceanus was the personification of the ether and its ability to connect above and below. The father of the Titans and Titanides, Uranus, was overthrown from his authority as king of the gods. In this symbolic coup, the story of spiritual progression begins a new cycle of evolutionary focus. The four brothers who held their father separate from their mother, the earth, were Coeus, Creus, Iaptus, and Hyperion. To understand the symbolism here, we must remember the Tetragrammaton. Many occult secrets have been deciphered with the use of this sacred cross. And surely wherever the number 4 represents itself, the cross needs to be applied. Let us remember the order of the elements: fire, water, air, earth. Let us remember the Hebrew letters assigned to each: Yod, He, Vav, He. Let us remember the cardinal signs of the zodiac which apply to each: eagle, lion, man, ox. And let us now hear the same story from a Titanic perspective. Coeus was the embodiment of resolve and intelligence. Ever striving to accomplish his goal, Coeus was the attribute we all must remember to keep within our minds. He was one of the 4 pillars used to hold the heaven and earth separate. He was the northern pillar. His placement was said to be part of the sky, which held the celestial axis, around which the heavens revolved. In the microcosm, we would place Coeus in the center of the brain, around which the sensory perceptions align. When we look to the skies, no matter where or when, we are reminded of the courage and long suffering of Coeus, the eternal light on the pathway. A constant reminder of focus and fortitude, his symbol was Polaris, the northern pillar of the heavens. When darkness encompasses us, Coeus is the reminder for man to keep looking up. We are always headed in that direction. Ascension is our goal. As Thoth reminds us, we must keep our eyes to the light, never be one with the darkness, but always seeking the light. The light of the physical realm is received by the eyes and concentrated into the pineal gland. Coeus is the eagle, the north, the winter, the moon, water, instinct, intuition, hay, subconscious, the sacred feminine, the third eye, and the light which has always been hidden within the darkness. Creus is the Greek term for ram. As Creus was the leader of the Titans and the ram, he was a personification of the constellation Aries and marked the beginning of the year. Aries is the cardinal fire sign of the zodiac and represents the will. As the southern pillar holding the heavens and the earth separate, he is the masculine power of action, though not necessarily requiring strategy. He supports his brothers in their movement of triumph over their fathers and descends southward to claim dominance in the physical realm. As the fire representative, he is the lion, the summer, the Manipura, the hand, the might, the mobility of cause, the yod, the ego, the ram, the sacred masculine, and the separation quality of choice. Hyperion, meaning high one, was attributed to the characteristics of wisdom, watchfulness, and light. Some translations of his name are more focused on the watchfulness aspect, giving him the title Watcher from Above, which instantly takes me to the Book of Enoch, right? This concept is broadened ancient, this concept is broadened in ancient Hebrew texts by Enoch as a category of heavenly creatures, the Watchers. In Greek mythology, however, he was the father of the sun, Helios, the moon, Selene, and the dawn, Eos. Hyperion held the eastern pillar of the heavens separate from the earth and assisted his brothers in overthrowing their father. His silent role in this uprising led to his being cast into the deep void of Tartarus, along with his brothers. Symbolically, he remains there, forgotten by men. Hyperion was wisdom and light. He watched and observed but did not act. This is definitive of the higher spirit or the divine poimandre in man. The personality and ego are active in man, but the higher spirit observes. If the spirit of man is a son of the microcosm, the higher spirit is the Hyperion, from which the sun was seated. His power was light, consciousness, awareness, comprehension, connection, and represented by the angel man version of the tetramorph, spring. His position was in the east, ascension, as the sun does daily, and the sun. Iaptis was the god of mortality. Iaptis, as the god of mortality, was a reminder of man's physical nature. While the rest of the Titans and Titanides were abstract ideas of creative forces of nature, Iaptis was centralized as a deity from which man was manifested and evolved. It's like Prometheus. Holding the western pillar of the heavens separate from the earth, Iaptis represents the earthly element, the load-bearing ox, the struggles and toils of physical manifestation, the limited incarceration of the spirit within the flesh, and the growth for which it is all manifested to provide. Iaptis was the west, autumn, Malkuth, sensory perception, personality, the mortal experience, the cycle of samsara, Maladara, and Maya. The Hermetic quaternary system of archetypal attributes of the characteristics within man being separated into 4 equal parts is older than the Greek gods, but explained perfectly within them. Much like the Hippocratic humors, the 4 elements of the tetragrammaton and the tetramorph, the 4 pillars of the heavens, are a secret of ascension. The ancient depiction of the qualities of spirit supporting the heavens and separating them from the earth teaches us that the only separation between physical and spiritual is within ourselves. Only our perception can alter our view, and only your will can alter your perception. When we combine the natural forces within us, we can ascend or descend according to our will. And then Kronos. Kronos, the god of time, the youngest of the Titans, was a manifestation of visible effects from an invisible cause. The heavens were mysterious progenitors of our ancestors. We could not fathom their existence or origin, but we could measure their motions. Kronos was a personification of this scientific method of exploration into the nature of the movements of the gods. His importance and dominance of the heavens developed as men began to evolve to the intelligence level of keeping calendars and dividing the course of the sun and moon into hours and phases. It was he, the boldest of all the manifested extensions of the heavens and the earth, who castrated his father with the ceremonial sickle and took his place on the throne. The sickle, being a tool of reaping, forever became a symbol of death. The masculine authority of the heavens was challenged with the creation of time. Time is an idea with no solidity, but very real effects. What is more fearful than an enemy you cannot touch, but which touches you? Time was the inevitable evolution of the study of the heavens. Men saw the cosmic circulations, and an understanding started a new cycle themselves. The reign of Kronos was the beginning of a new yuga. Nature was no longer the only inhabitant of Gaia. Gaia wanted children, not simply within her heart, but surrounding her and interacting with her in physicality. Kronos' symbol was the Chi-Rho, a combination of the Greek letters X and P, wherein the letters stem from the same source overlapping. I don't know why I worded it like that. Constantine, in the 4th century, was said to have seen a vision of the Chi-Rho, confusing it for the Christian symbol of the cross, and used it to change the course of Rome and thereby the world. The Titanides were the ladies of the 2nd generation gods. They were ideas meant to polarize and complement the masculine energies of the Titans. In this dual realm, each energy requires an opposite in order to remain in balance. Giving them names and backstories was a favorite method of creative remembrance. Eurybia, whose name means wide force, was the sister/consort of Creus. Her father was Pontus, the sea, which makes her an extension of the combination of the two feminine energies of water and earth. Unlike her consort, whose beginnings are a collaboration of earth and sky, she represents the fierceness of the feminine powers over the waters. The water element is more than the seas of the earth, and her dominance is extended to the subconscious, the Swadhisthana chakra, and the womb. She was an extension of the below aspects of water and earth. Her domain was everywhere water, emotion, and instinct could be found. Anyone who wished to attain power over the waters would ask it of her. Eventually, they literalized her power into being over the oceans and seas, but as a primordial deity, her power extended beyond the veil. This is apparent in her children, whose powers are more for dominance than water. Each of her children held a title of respect and fear appropriate to the wide force of the water manifestation upon the earth. And then it's like a chart. She had 3 kids. Astraeus, which means starry, whose power was keeper of the winds, whose title was god of the dusk. Perses, whose name means to ravage, whose power was to destroy and to transmute, whose title was the god of destruction. And Pallas, the first Pallas, not the second Pallas, whose power was, he was wager of wars, and his title was the god of war. Eurybia, an extension of water and earth, and Creus, an extension of earth and air, create the next generation of dark energies. Astraeus, the dusk, was keeper of the winds. His domain was inherited from his father, and his reign was over the hours of twilight. From his polarity/wife, Eos, the dawn, he gave the universe the Nemoi, the 4 winds, Astra Planeta, the planets, and Astraea, which is essentially just Virgo, Libra. At dusk, the winds were said to gather together under Astraeus. He could collect and distribute them as needed. They were represented by noble horses riding faster than any mortal horse ever could. For this reason, the luminaries are said to be pulled by a horse-drawn chariot across the sky. Even the Christian Bible reveals the secret of the winds as horses delivering doom in the book of Revelation. The introduction of the planets in the Titan era was attributed to Eurybia's line through Astraeus to explain their movements in the heavens. They too were pulled by the winds and known as wanderers. Astraea was the only daughter of Astraeus, representing the constellations of Libra and Virgo. So the planets' names were, for Saturn it was Phaenon, for Jupiter it was Phaethon, for Mars Pyrois, for Venus Eosphorus, and for Mercury Stilbun. We did not have to do Stilbun that way. And then the names of the 4 winds, the north wind was Boreas, that's where you get Hyperborean from. The south wind was called Notus, the east wind was called Eurus, and the west wind was called Zephyrus with a Z. Eurybia's son Pallas was a personification of the darkness of the inner being, which produced a desire for war. His attributes are personified in his children: Nike, which is victory, Zealous, which is rivalry, Kratos, which is power, and Baia, which is might. These are the feminine energies in their masculine form. The power of the great goddess of power over the waters was expanded upon in the personalities of her grandchildren. These are the personalities of one who desires power. If you ask Eurybia for power, she might answer your prayer by sending you one of her fearsome grandchildren, though that may not bring the effect you desired. Pallas was consort to the goddess Styx. She also gave him Scylla, which is a sea monster, fountains, which is called fonts, and Lacus, which is lakes. Eurybia and Creus also gave rise to Perses, the god of transmutation. His official title read more like the god of destruction, but transmutation was his actual skill. His ability to tear apart was a prerequisite to his purpose of putting things back together. His consort, Asteria, gave him one child, Hecate, goddess of witchcraft. In the primordial world of gods and titans, witchcraft was a respected power and fearsome responsibility. Her powers were expanded to control over boundaries, crossroads, and ghosts. Which is cool. It would seem that the daughter of transmutation had a lot of work to do. Having a ghost-like appearance herself, she was said to be polymorphic, and her domain was the earth, sky, and water. She was anywhere and everywhere. She was anyone and everyone. She held knowledge of all the herbs and plants of the earth, creating her far-reaching potions. As her work was primarily with extraterrestrial matters, her residence was said to be in the underworld. Though she was free to enter and exit as needed, she was depicted as three-headed or three-bodied in most renderings. This was an attribute held by thrice-born beings, a concept well understood by the Mystery Science initiate as having been raised from the dead or received spiritual awakening and ascension of consciousness. Her depictions also often reveal that she was accompanied by hounds. The hounds of the barrier, as Thoth reminds us, are guardians of the dimensional portals. A soul apart from its physical body who would attempt to venture into the worlds unknown must face the hounds of the barrier and risk eternal incarceration if he was caught. Hecate was the Greek version of Isis from the Egyptian pantheon. She was kind-hearted to children, wise in magic, charismatic among the people, and lived a life of servitude. It wasn't until much later in the evolution of the Greek pantheon that Hecate was considered a ruthless sorceress. Her symbol in the heavens was Sirius, the star by which the Egyptians set their calendar. She was consistently worshipped by many cultures and given many names, but in Greece, she was honored as the protector of the home from evil spirits. She was the guide of lost souls. She was the healer, the guardian, and the beloved feminine blessing upon the home. Shrines for her were commonly placed near doorways and in cities at crossroads with three paths. Phoebe was the complement to Coeus, the northern pillar of the heavens. Her name means bright or radiant, and she was the goddess of prophecy and knowledge. Daughter of Uranus and Gaia, she was one of the Titanides who avoided the punishment of Tartarus for the overthrow of her father. She was associated with the moon, as it was a symbol of her vision above and beyond the earthly realm. Her children were Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis, and Astraea, mother of Hecate. Her powers of prophecy were worshipped at the Temple of Delphi, where, like in most buildings created to the gods, men used the power of her name to take advantage of other men by professing to have divine knowledge from her oracles. Tethys was the goddess of fresh waters and the consort to Oceanus. She was said to have been estranged from her husband at the time when the waters of the above and below were separated, as explained in both the Christian and Sumerian creation stories. She plays the role of Tiamat in the latter. She was also the goddess of nursing, whom women would pray to for healthy milk production. Fresh waters are feminized here in ancient Greece as a separate energy from salt waters. The role of Tethys was to care for the creatures and plants of the earth as the sustenance they required in order to turn sunlight into growth. We now know that water carries memory, and so the role she played can be enlarged in that light. Not only did she have the power to go wherever she pleased within the earth, but also to carry and communicate memories of her travels. Her offspring were all the rivers and the Oceanids. Her most notable children were the goddess Styx, which was the river between the earth and the underworld, Metis, which was an Oceanid and the mother of Athena, Eurynome, who was a mermaid and the mother to the Graces or the Charities, and Clymene, which was the wife of Aeacus, and Perseus, which is Perseis, who was the wife of Helios, and Achelous, who is the father of the Sirens, and Doris, the wife of Nereus. Thea, also known as Euryphasia, Wide Shining was her name, was the eldest daughter of Uranus and the goddess of sight. It was she who gave glittering beauty to the precious metals and stones of the earth. Thea, Theia. She was also the consort to Hyperion and bore him the sun, Helios, the moon, Selene, and the dawn, Eos. Having much to do with the visible light spectrum, Thea is a perfect complement to Hyperion, who is light. She brings the glory of his essence to the below by providing the ability for reception of it. Their children are each manifested aspects of light, the moon and sun being the primary water and fire aspects of light, and the dawn being the transitional property between the two. Thea was considered to be an aspect of the ether as she resided in the realm of Oceanus, awaiting the arrival of her son each evening. This explains her gift of shine to the earth. In the astral plane, the visible light spectrum is extended, and the colors of images interpreted are more glittery and seem to shine compared to the dullness of the physical plane. Clymene was the name attributed to several Greek characters. The Titanide Clymene is the Oceanid daughter of Tethys and Oceanus. Later accounts refer to her as Asia, simply to avoid confusion. Clymene was niece and consort to Aeaptus, the western pillar separating the heavens from the earth. She was an ocean nymph, an elemental spirit over the waters. Her collaboration with Aeaptus produced 4 sons, whose personalities describe her contribution to the world. Atlas was said to have upheld the heavens in the extreme west, like his father. He was a philosopher, a mathematician, and an astrologer. His cartography of the celestial spheres were said to have been the first ever recorded and passed on to men for their wisdom. He was the god of navigation, and with his knowledge of the heavens, he was the spirit of seafaring, which gave mobility to men. Atlas has ever been the name attributed to world maps. His energy was a gift of growth through culture, sharing, and trade. His offspring included the Hesperides, the Hyades, the Pleiades, and Calypso. Damn. Epimethus, meaning hindsight or afterthinker, and Prometheus, meaning foresight or forethinker, were twin sons of Aeaptus and Clymene. The polarity here is that these are qualities which mirror each other and therefore must be treated as equally important. Epimetheus was the father of Pyrrha, with his wife, the first human woman created by the gods. Epimetheus was the father of this person with his wife, the first human woman created by the gods, Pandora. Boom. Epimetheus, Pandora had a baby. Prometheus fathered the Greek flood survivor Deucalion. Epimetheus and Prometheus were tasked with giving personality traits to the living creatures of the earth. Epimetheus gave positive traits to all creatures, but ran out before he could give any to man. Prometheus tried to be clever and give man civilization and fire, but these were concepts already in use and were stolen from the gods. From this concept, we gather that the personality of man comes from experience. That way, each individual builds his or own personality and cannot attribute their characteristics to any of the gods. Prometheus' famous punishment for his theft of fire from Hephaestus was to be chained to a rock, material existence, and consistently visited by an eagle, heavenly messenger, who would disembowel him, cause forgetfulness, and eat his liver, which is connected to the Manipura and said to be the seat of the soul in those times, which would heal and grow back, spiritual progression, for the process to be repeated again the following day. Oh, forgetfulness. Menoetius, meaning ill-fated or doomed might. Why would you name your kid that? Was the personification of man's pride. His qualities were of rashness and overconfidence. He is the parts of man which lead to doom. Atlas being the air quality, Epimetheus and Prometheus representing fire and water aspects, and Menoetius is the earthly aspect of man, keeping him bound to this plane of unfoldment. Clymene was also said to have produced children with Helios, including Phaethon, who tragically died trying to control the chariot of his father, and 5 daughters. The Hyades, who mourned the loss of their brother until they were transformed into poplar trees, This portion of Clymene's myth was a reminder of the dangers of taking on more than one could bear. Rhea, meaning discharge or flow, was the youngest Titanide and consort to Cronus. She was the goddess of fertility and motherhood. Her symbol was a pair of lions, which even today are commonplace guardians of the home. Her husband/brother, Cronus, was the god of time who overthrew the heavens as king of the gods. In the same way, Rhea replaced her mother, Gaia, as the source of growth and nurturing. As civilizations began to form and grow, a specific importance was placed on procreation as being the prime responsibility of women. It all went downhill from there for women. It's like literally in quotation marks I put that. Or like in parentheses I put that there. I don't know why I did that. It was funny though. Rhea was mother to 6 children who, including Hestia, would eventually repeat the Titan ritual of overthrowing their parents for rule of the universe. The 3 sons of Cronus were extensions of masculine power of past, present, and future. The 3 daughters of Rhea were extensions of the feminine power of growth, love, and nurturing. Yeah, let's do that next time. Okay, this is like almost an hour long. But also, yeah, so ancient Greece is like extensive, but it's all just like copy and paste it, but like in another language. It's like all, anyway, yeah, we'll do a part 2.